Today, I will be discussing the relationship between emotions derived from Toronto's G20 Summit demonstrations among Torontonians and Toronto's 2010 election for mayor. The purpose of this research is to explore if the feelings of shame, sadness, and disgust among Torontonians as a result of the G20 Summit demonstrations had affected the voting patterns throughout Toronto's 2010 election for mayor. The dataset being used is the G20 survey. The dependent variable is Toronto's mayoral election, and the following emotions of shame, sadness, and disgust that were derived from Toronto's G20 Summit protests among Torontonians are the independent variables. The relationship between the independent and dependent variables reflect the respondents' support in terms of the political parties and candidates' view on crime prevention in Toronto. Before I begin, it is important to mention that during Toronto's 2010 election for mayor, Rob Ford ran for the Conservative Party, George Smitherman ran for the Liberal Party, and Joe Pantalone ran for the New Democratic Party. Torontonians who feel shame as a result of the demonstrations during Toronto's G20 Summit will generally vote for Rob Ford during the last mayoral election. Individuals who are ashamed of the protesters' actions are embarrassed on behalf of Toronto and likely to vote Conservative in order to spare future embarrassment of this kind. The Conservative Party's outlook on how to prevent crime is the most severe. Torontonians who felt sadness as a result of the demonstrations during Toronto's G20 Summit are not likely to vote for a specific political party and be on the Liberal and Conservative stream. This may be because the feeling of sadness is more passive in contrast to the other two variables. Finally, Torontonians who consider the G20 demonstration to be disgusting were very likely to vote for Rob Ford. This is because, as previously mentioned, Rob Ford strives to prevent crime, even if it calls for extreme methods, such as Chief Bill Blair's during the G20 Summit. The reliability analysis of the indicators for the mayor election reveals an alpha score of 0.5976. This indicates that the three independent variables chosen are related enough to create an index. Shame by the election for mayor in a cross-tabulation reveals that 49% of the respondents voted for Rob Ford, while approximately 30% of the votes were for George Smitherman. This indicates that Rob Ford was the preferred candidate amongst the ashamed sample. The chi-square value is 0.01669, which shows that these results are very unlikely to be due to chance. The Creamer's V in this case is 0.13582. This indicates a very weak relationship between the variables. Sadness by the election for mayor in a cross-tabulation reveals that 44% of the respondents voted for Rob Ford, while 37% of the respondents voted for George Smitherman. Ford obtains only a 7% advantage over Smitherman. It is fair to say that there is not a large difference between the two. The chi-square value here is 0.86374. This indicates that the respondents' votes are likely to be a result of chance. Furthermore, the Creamer's V score for this crosstab is 0.03653. This also demonstrates a very weak relationship between the two variables. Disgust by the election for mayor in a cross-tabulation reveals that 52% of the respondents voted for Rob Ford, while only 33% voted for George Smitherman. This indicates that respondents who believe the 2010 G20 demonstrations to be disgusting prefer Rob Ford as Toronto's mayor. It is important to mention that throughout this crosstab, a lower percent of respondents in general voted for third parties in contrast to the previous two crosstabs. The chi-square here is 0. This proves that these results are very unlikely to be due to chance. The Creamer's V is 0.26061. This indicates that there is a moderately strong relationship between the two variables. Overall, there is a very weak relationship between Toronto's 2010 election for mayor and the feelings of shame and sadness. Torontonians who are ashamed of the G20 demonstrations are more likely to vote for Rob Ford. This is because Rob Ford agrees with extreme measures if needed to avoid criminal activity. Torontonians who are sad over the 2010 G20 demonstrations are not likely to support any specific candidate. They support either one of Canada's dominant parties. Moreover, there is a strong relationship between Torontonians who are disgusted by the G20 demonstrations and the 2010 election for mayor. Rob Ford was the preferred candidate amongst individuals who were disgusted. To conclude, Rob Ford was the preferred candidate during 2010 elections for mayor amongst those who were disgusted and ashamed of Toronto's 2010 G20 Summit demonstrations. This indicates the Conservative Party's reputation in terms of criminal prevention. Thank you.